Ralph, Salon Littéraire, what you called your magnum opus. I'd love to talk with you about it because I know that along with the folks that I've shown the previews to, are so excited about it. And I mean, you are the grandfather of the photo book. You've published scores of books. So just start out on this book. Why this? What was the genesis of the idea behind this book, and why did you do it?
Well, I'm very pleased to address that issue because I have been working in France for 50 years plus, and I had the largest single body of work I had consecrated to one subject, one culture, one vast idea. And it was during the start of the pandemic when I started seriously writing and plunging into my archive and attempting to determine what it is I really wanted to do with all this. And, all my previous books were much shorter in sequences, in duration. And two things occurred to me. One is that I really need to try to do something vast. I have to bite off a bigger challenge. And the other thing was that thanks to digital lithography, now we can print a 400-page book because of the technology that makes it possible to attack it, both in layout and in production on your end.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. You said this is I think I remember you saying this is like a 50-year love affair with France, and your homage to that affair. And when people do photo projects for books, oftentimes it's a 2-year, 3-year, maybe a 5-year effort with a specific subject. And there's like this halting intention, where you work on it really feverishly for a little while, and then you have to go do some other things, maybe how you make a living, then you go back to it, and then there's this on and off. But 50 years, this is a reflex. This is a natural activity for you where everything comes as a moment and a series of moments of just natural intention, where it's a relaxed visitation on the subject over time. It's a very natural thing.
That makes a big difference. I've been very fortunate in that since early 70s, 1971, I think, when I had my first exhibition in France, I've been very well understood and received there. And so I've been invited to do different commissions by the Ministry of Culture. And that's how the genesis of how I developed all these images occurred. And I've always been closely aligned with French culture in terms of my own personal education. It's been something I've wanted to develop in myself. And so, like any extended work, even though this is called Salon Littéraire and it's 420 pages on France, there is always that element of self-portraiture involved. This is sort of a reflection of my experience, and I don't really attempt to show anything, but I'm interested in seeing how I see. And that's what a book, working on a book, is the most important to me for.
Well, as a student of photography and as a student and follower of your work, I'd love for you to talk about your earliest image and your latest image and how they relate.
Well, I believe the earliest image in this might have been the Citroën, the car at night, and it had some of my vocabulary involved in the geometry and the composition and the diagonals and the contrast and this and that. But one of the things is that as I continued to understand the culture better, I started reading about semiotics and linguistics and things like that, Claude Lévi-Strauss and cultural anthropology. And I noticed that the vocabulary of shapes in France hasn't really, it hasn't diminished whatsoever. You could argue that it's slightly increased, but probably the most recent pictures in the book look like some of the very earliest ones. I did go back. I had the opportunity to do some very recent pieces in this book. And this is a perfect example of a two-page spread where the portrait of my wife's collarbone here on the left was made in 76, and this was made about 2 years ago. So at the same time, there's a rapport, a connection, a transparency that exists throughout the work. It's really about the dialogue of shapes, and because it's such a profoundly defined culture, everything in France looks French. When you're there, that's what happens. And as we're members of the New World here in America, I can travel anywhere in the New World and there'll be similarities. Whereas you go to some of the older cultures, you start seeing, in this case, 400 or 500 years of starting with Louis XIV on through Haussmann renovation of the city of Paris.
Yeah, fantastic. That leads me to a question about pairings and shapes and creating that third image. So it's one of the most intimidating things being a photographer when going to put a book together. To sit down and sequence and pair the images is it can be such a painful process at times, or drag out, while you really wrestle with things. But with you, it comes so natural. And when I look through the book, it's really a lesson in how to pair images, and it's fun for me to look at shapes and form and structure and think, I get inside of Ralph's mind. I know exactly what he was thinking there. And for me, it's the same thing, and it informs how I might look at some things then.
Well, that's obviously very nice to hear. I have developed this language. It has a lot to do with musical composition and structure. In Refractions, I wrote briefly about how if you hit a C chord on the guitar, C, E, G, it releases additional tonalities called overtones, which cannot be struck directly. I believe that there's content between the two images, which is the result of the pair. And I'm very often going for not so much the pairing of the photographs, but the effect the pairing produces.
Right.
See, and what I realize when I listen to a certain pieces of music or look at certain paintings, what I'm seeing or what I'm experiencing is not necessarily in the photograph or in the painting. It's causing a reaction.
When you get a book together and you have the imagery together, how do you present it? It comes down to selecting materials and drawing from the things that you like and the things that you don't like with how an image sits on a page. Talk to us just a little bit about the construction of the book, everything from the fabric to the paper to the types of varnish you want, which you were very, very specific about.
Yes, well, what you and I are discussing now is a collaboration between the two. You and I produced a third personality called the book. Right. You see, without our mutual engagement, this would be a different story altogether. Now, because you are a passionate photographer, and I am a passionate lithographer by amateur passionate photographer, amateur passionate lithographer. I know that if you can effectively combine a series of ingredients, the right paper, the right size, the right binding, a certain attitude towards color, a certain attitude towards how the colors trap, and you and I happen to share this rapport. We have a strong rapport of what we want to see on the page. And Refractions was our first venture, which was a huge success. And I think that I learned a lot about how you put ink on a page from Refractions and vice versa. So we had a number of conversations, as you recall, in which we discussed different ways to go. But I wanted all the advantages of high technology, but I wanted a very slight 19th century echo to the feel of the book,
And how do you think you achieved that? What did you do to get there?
Well, first of all, we were able to unify unify the scans. You know, this book is comprised of analog as well as a lot of digital work from the last 10, 15 years. You can't tell the difference on the page. I would challenge anybody to do it. I mean, this is a form of visual harmony. When you can bring analog and digital together on the page and produce a desired effect, it's the results that count. So that was a huge victory on our part, I felt.
That is massive. When you can take, no matter the generation of the medium, it is the picture. It's not how the picture was created, you know, and you allowed Peter, the guy who did all the separations in this book, to really get inside your head. And there's a wonderful homogeneous feel to this whole thing. The other thing I really liked, Ralph, was your willingness to let us explore papers a bit, because the paper is neither too light, it's not too heavy, it's not too blue-white, it's not too warm-white. Everything supports and applauds the images in this book. And for me, that's quite a victory, where it allows the images, when you open the book, the images come out and talk to you. You don't have to search for them. The other thing about this book, because of that, it allows you to come back over and over to the book. This is not a book that you become complacent or bored with, not just because of the length, but because of the way the images work together. You want to revisit it. I really love that about the way you put that together.
Well, it cannot be seen in one sitting unless you would miss out on too much. I've been revisiting it and asking myself questions about it. And also, one of the things is you didn't mention that we started printing the book and you didn't like the paper in the first form. And at considerable expense, both financial and in terms of time, we sent a batch of paper back and had to wait another 2 or 3 months till we got the right stock.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah.
That's a huge a lack of compromise.
Right. Well, a book lives forever, you know, and you can allow deadlines and things to get in the way of excellence. And you know, little things make big differences. And the paper that we did start with it just wasn't happening. It left you flat.
I will tell you one thing, Bob. I've been looking at it for 2 weeks since you sent me the advanced copies. And I have a copy in my studio and I have a copy at home. And I open it to different pages in the morning, in the afternoon, in the course of the day, and in the evening. And I'm continually revisiting the book. And I haven't had such satisfaction in my entire career in any publication since my breakthrough of The Somnambulist, which was a mere 48 pages in 1970. But one of the things that's interesting about a project this large is the great French philosopher Roland Barthes says that the author is only half of the book. If you got 5,000 people reading the book, you got 5,000 different interpretations of the author. So I really feel that this volume is going to function in that manner as well.
Good. Well, Ralph, thank you. Until next time we talk about this book, I really appreciate your insights, and I look forward to sharing this with the world.
Thanks, partner. Talk to you soon.
All righty, take care.